There we go. Can you guys hear me still? I have my AirPod in. It kind of sounds breaking up, but I don't know if it's my AirPod or my internet.
I can
I'm
hear you.
in, okay, good. I was gonna say I'm in Dallas, so I'm actually in an Uber on my way to the regional awards, so I'll get to bring back some awards for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so hey guys, good morning. Teresa is gonna cover. Normally on shift we talk about. Right now we're in creative financing. And I'm a little biased because she's my sister, but I don't think so because I don't know anybody else that's as good as getting creative with the deal as Teresa is. So she's been in the business for, I don't know, over 20 years. Teresa, you tell them how long, and kind of a little bit about your background. But I told Sarah I think she would be a good one to get on here and just maybe give you guys some real life examples of how to use some of these creative financing. So I'm gonna let her take it away, but that's my intro. So go ahead, T.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite. In creative financing has always been in my career. I started out working with investors. I've been doing real estate since 2002. I didn't get licensed until '06 initially, but I started out working with investors. So we were purchasing properties and then offering them for rent, lease option, or for sale. So it was during that time where we were helping people stop foreclosures. And that's just sort of where I got my background in real estate. So I've always sort of thought outside the box because I was initially trained that way before I got my license. But today I just wanted to talk about some strategies that you can use in the market to still make money in this market and protect your commission. And so I'm going to turn on, let's see here, share. Can you see my screen? Okay, cool. I think you can. All right, so
Yes.
there we go. So creative financing in action, just things that we're seeing out here, real plays in today's market. The Memphis market is ripe for creative deals because we have a lot of affordable property. I'll say that first of all. Investors from out of state love our area because properties are generally more affordable with more opportunity to cash flow. So common situations you'll see in Memphis are investor-owned properties. There's a lot of them here. Homes that won't qualify for FHA. You run into this in the market when you're shopping with buyers and the property just needs too many repairs, or you run into it where you see sellers that have a property they want to sell, but they do not have the money to fix it up so that it could sell on the retail market. So this is a way to, get creative with buyers in the retail market and still be able to write an offer and protect your commission. We have a lot of sellers in Memphis who have equity and don't need all cash. I worked with a woman who was transitioning to an assisted living and was glad to accept a subject to deal because it gave her an upfront amount of money to work with, and then she got to count on that monthly income. So she was open to it. And then you'll see buyers in this market who are self-employed or credit challenged. They have cash, but they do not have credit to obtain, a true loan right now. So they're the ones who will call and say, hey, is this seller offering financing, or can you find out if the seller will take financing on this property? And the first question I always ask them is, do you have a significant down payment? Because that's what they will need in order to secure some type of seller financing deal if they can't qualify for a traditional loan. And vacant properties. So a lot of properties sitting, dilapidated, need work. And if those sellers contact you, or if you're able to contact those sellers, they need money for repairs. They need repairs. So I'm going to show you something creative I did on a deal to get it financed. So first of all, when you have a buyer who requests seller financing, like I said, these calls come in and they want to know if the seller will take it. So you need to ask the seller or the listing agent if your seller could get their price, would they accept terms? That's a clear question. And it opens the conversation, right? So I want you to look at this contract that I did because to me, the quickest way to get down to business is to present it in writing. So what I do is write it up, and you can see line 58. I checked other on financing and I put seller financing right in the contract because that will be the financing type. Okay. And then in special stipulations, we wrote as is, all inspections made before agreement because we had already done all of that process. but the buyer agreed to pay $20,000 down to be paid to the seller at closing. Okay, so I write these terms right into special stipulations so that the closing company knows how to prepare the documents for the seller financing. So you're going to address all of the terms. So $20,000 down, seller to finance the remaining balance of $55,000, amortized over 10 years at an interest rate of 7.5. Monthly payments will be no more than 655 a month for 120 months, right? And then buyer to pay compensation to me, Teresa Guy Keller Williams, in the amount of 2250. So whatever your compensation is, you write it right into special stipulations so it's clear. And this means you still have to have all of these commission conversations up front with your buyer, but usually when they're willing to pay a down payment, they're also willing to pay you because they're very thankful, if you can help them secure a seller finance deal. Most agents don't understand it and they'll shy away from those type of deals, but if you know how to write it up, you can get a transaction going with the seller. So this is why I address it in special stipulations. All right, and then it says just buyer and seller to pay closing costs to Edco. So who's going to pay what? There shall be $0 earnest money. And that's because they had just agreed to that on this particular sale. It was a $75,000 house, and she had let the buyer already move in. They didn't have a lease option, but he was there cleaning up the property, taking care of the property. So for their own reasons, occupancy, she didn't want to take an earnest money. So anything that applies to the transaction, you just put it right in there. And that way, when you send this to the closing company, they know how to prepare the promissory note and the deed of trust for the seller to carry the note. So everything will transfer to the buyer. Taxes wise, the house will go into the buyer's name, but the seller will be the financer. So that's a good seller finance way. I mean, just always write it in the contract, address it, and most sellers will be open to it if they want that lump sum up front and still to expect payments. All right, and then another thing I see a lot in the market is subject to offers. If you guys have listings, you've probably gotten the emails. Will your seller accept payments? Will they work on terms? They'll say things like that. So that indicates creative financing, that they're trying to put a deal together. And you can negotiate this. You can negotiate it just like you would a regular deal. So you would ask the seller, would you be okay with a lump sum payment and the buyer taking over your payments? You'll see this more in distressed situations where the seller may be facing, foreclosure, or maybe they had to move and they have two mortgages now. So they're willing because they don't have to buy another house, because when you do subject to, the buyer would be taking over the seller's payments. So that triggers some risk. But if the seller does not need to buy another home anytime soon, and they're okay with that staying on their credit because the original mortgage would stay in the seller's name, they may be able to take that lump sum payment, get rid of their liability, and take payments over time. So with the subject to, things you could write in special stipulations would be buyer agrees to purchase the property subject to the existing mortgage encumbering the property. Okay. Buyer shall convey title to the buyer with the warranty deed. The existing loan shall remain in the seller's name. Buyer agrees to make all payments on the loan, beginning with the payment due after closing. Buyer agrees to keep the existing loan current. These are just things that you could put in there to protect your sellers in this case. They have to maintain property insurance. And so you can, whatever's relevant to the seller in the transaction, but these are sort of standard things. And then also the biggest risk with subject to that I want you to be aware of is that the original lender could call the loan due. So this last paragraph talks about the agreement's contingent upon the existing lender not calling, the loan due with the due on sale clause prior to closing or immediately following. In the event that they do call it due, the buyer may terminate the agreement and the earnest money will be refunded. So if the original mortgage, usually they don't check unless the seller, for some reason, is bringing attention to it. But most of the time, these will just transfer into the new, buyer's name. It'll just, well, the taxes and everything will transfer, but property will stay subject to, the existing mortgage. If the mortgage company finds out and they call the loan due, than it would be due in full. But usually the investor would refinance it or do something to go ahead and get that out of the seller's name. So not too much of a risk, but sellers don't understand it, and you have to be able to explain it just sort of in simple terms. Lease options. We're running low on time, so we know what these are. I just want all new agents, especially, to be familiar with lease options. You would need the lease option agreement and the option agreement, and the purchase and sale agreement. Okay. So this is what I want you to see is that on the option agreement, there's a stipulation at the top, and this comes on the TAR form. And it says when using the option, you have to include in the purchase and sale special stipulations. So again, it's directing you to put everything in special stipulations. This purchase and sale agreement shall become binding upon the parties only when the buyer exercises the option to purchase. So there's just special language that you have to include on that purchase and sale, but that protects your commission, okay? The rent agreement, the option agreement, and having the purchase and sale executed protects your commission when they do purchase the home. With lease options, buyers usually put down a bigger down payment to buy a term of maybe 2 years, which will allow them to be able to keep the home now, move in, make payments, and then have to qualify for financing at a later date. But sellers are open to these creative options, and your job as an agent is to bring solutions. So get versed on creative financing. It's definitely something relevant in this market, and it's a way that you can set yourself apart. One thing I wanted to show you before we go is a way to help finance repairs. So one time I had a deal where there was just extensive repairs that needed to be done. The buyer did qualify for a conventional loan, but they said, gosh, this is a lot of work. We cannot finance all these repairs. We only have so much money left after, we pay for closing costs and everything. So they were trying to figure out how to redo the kitchen, how to replace the HVAC. So we negotiated with the seller, and I said, hey, the buyer really wants the home, but the repairs are extensive. They're willing to take on the bulk of the responsibility, but they do need some help. And because they had a conventional loan, um, they were, able to secure that, and they had some money, but we put it in a replacement amendment, I'm sorry. And really Edco taught me how to do this, but it says seller agrees to pay. So there's your financing, right? The seller is now paying for repairs, but this is not in conjunction with the loan. You'll never send this repair replacement to the lender because the money's not going directly to the buyer, but this is a way to finance repairs. So seller agrees to pay the contractors of the buyer's choice up to $16,000 to make painting, flooring, HVAC, and additional repairs. Money will be paid at closing and held at Edco Title. Money will then be paid by Edco Title to the contractors directly after completion of repairs. The seller went for this. So my buyer got to purchase the home, and they had 16,000 sitting in escrow. So we got to go out, we had to do extra work, get the estimates and things like that, but they were able to finance the majority of the repairs because we got the seller to agree. It still got the seller to the closing table, and the buyer was happy, to take over the responsibility of the property. So there's always a way to work things out in negotiations. You just do have to be, a little creative with your solutions. So if anyone has any questions, but I think that's time. So thank you
That
guys.
was perfect. No, thank you. Um, See, anyway, you might have to teach a whole class on it, honestly.
There's a lot to
But
it.
these things are, yeah, I'm like, there's a lot to it. Um, Honestly, T, I know if I ever actually needed to do a seller finance, I mean, not like a lease option, I'd call you, but I've never done it, so I didn't even know all the paperwork. So I appreciate you getting on here and showing this. Yeah, this is all great information. Um, so I know I talked about it yesterday on the team meeting, and I know Teresa said it, and she honestly taught me that our job is to create solutions to people's problems. So if you don't know how to solve it, mastermind with someone else, call Teresa, call a broker, call your title company and say,
Yes.
hey, this is what we're trying to do. Is there a way to do it?
Hmm.
Hey, these are the things we're trying to do. What is the verbiage I need to make sure is in here to protect my client? So where
Correct.
Teresa has all these things already typed out, it's because she's worked through them already with the title company and things. So she knows from experience, but it's okay if you don't. Use your vendors and your preferred people to teach you and make sure you're
Absolutely.
protecting your client.
Absolutely.
So
I love it.
yes, well, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Ask
Yeah,
me a
go ahead.
question. So I learned
What'd you
everything
say?
by asking questions. I said I learned everything just by asking questions. Um, I'm just like, how can we make this happen? So they'll let you know, and the sellers will let you know what they want, and the buyers will let you know what they need. So just be willing to have conversations, but do always protect your commission. Make sure you're having commission conversations. There's a way to write it into everything. So if you ever question that, call me. Yep, I'll show you how to get paid.
Awesome. Thanks, T. All right, y'all have a good day. Go kill it. If you're going to bold, have a good bold day. And if you're not going to bold, go be bold and take some bold action and call some people.
Yep.
Bye, y'all.